Okay, welcome everybody. Hope you're having a good first day of conference so far. My name is Rob Lansfield. I will be chairing this session, but that will largely just consist of keeping things running on time. We'll have two more speakers joining us in a bit after Sheila's half hour. You will first be hearing from Sheila Brennan, who is the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Acting Director of Public Projects at the Rosenzweig Center for History and New Media. In addition to running many digital public humanities projects, she is a historian interested in the intersections between museums, cultural memory, and digital technologies. Sheila.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. All right. Now, just like last night, I am not a tall person, so in order to be heard, I need to adjust the microphone. So thanks so much, Rob, and thank you all for being here. Although I'm standing up front here, I'm really hoping to act more as a facilitator and much less of a speaker. And I know it's a little bit hard in a situation where it's set up like this, lecture style, but I'm hoping that we can talk to one another and engage in some conversations about some things that I'm interested in, and I hope that you all are interested in, related to the objects that are in our collections. I was thinking about this idea really being inspired from the 25th anniversary of the Fred Wilson show that was mining the museum at the Baltimore, well, it was a collaboration, but it took place at the Maryland Historical Society. And for those of you who are not familiar, I did include some resources. First, let me point you to this Google Doc, which is open and available for you all to join. I can see the anonymous animals are starting to come in, so please feel free to follow along, and I would like you all to contribute and comment. So it's a bit.ly, it's bit.ly/radicalizing objects, capital R, capital O. Can you all see that in the back? I can also give it a little, oops, there we go. That might help a little bit. Also, you may feel free to tweet things that I say, and also, oops, my Slack channel is speaking at me. I may need to turn that off in a minute if I get pinged again, hopefully not. And we can have discussions sort of together in this room, but also hopefully on this document, and also as we continue on throughout our day and our conference. So, a few years back, which now the few is becoming more years than I would like to remember, when I used to work at a history museum, even though now I'm working at a university. But I was a director of an education and public programs department, and I used my department, the public programming, as I could to kind of get around the collections. And sometimes curators who were unwilling to invite me and include me in the exhibition development process and the content creation process. And I would say at the time I didn't do a good job of looking closely at the objects in the collection and what was missing, who was missing, and doing a job of addressing that and bringing that forth in different kinds of ways. So those are the kinds of questions, in addition to being inspired, as I said before, by Fred Wilson's mining the museum of, how can we enable this kind of curation that comes from both outside a museum, together with objects inside museums, that invite challenging critique, but that also help to tell stories that may be important to a particular community, or things that have changed since the museum was founded, since the collection was accessioned and collected. So what I've done here is to compile some questions and issues. I'm sorry. And pardon my Slack interruptions there. But some big questions that I would like for us to discuss, and also see, like, am I asking the right questions? Are these useful questions? That I'll just read over briefly, but then I really want to turn to you all and see what you think of some of these ideas, and if there are things that we can build, if there are things that we can do digitally that may not be possible physically in the museum, or that may be possible now using different kinds of digital platforms, collections APIs, pulling in and using collections in different kinds of ways. So first of all, obviously, we've got to recognize that it is difficult to change the composition of existing collections. Sometimes that's the stopping point, and sometimes the like, oh, we don't do that. We don't do African American history. We don't interpret Native American communities that lived in this area because we don't have anything in our collections that speak to that. And I think that the sort of the history of those collections was sometimes it was embedded in practices of colonialism, empire nation, some of these discussions I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. So how can we reinterpret, reuse what we have to sort of push against that? To look beyond silences, absences in the collections, to tell stories of people, places, and things that may actually be found. And as I said before, sometimes that happens through public programming, but how can we do that with collections? How can history museums invite and enable this interpretations that critique the practices that may have brought them to the museum in the first place? So the formation of the institutions, is that even possible? Also, is this kind of collaboration that opened the doors for an artist to come into the Maryland Historical Society possible today? Is it only possible because it's an artist? And because the kinds of juxtapositions and the labels and the framing are, as one observer, Elizabeth Ginsburg, who did a review of this exhibit, say it was successful because it was suggestive and not didactic, provocative rather than moralizing. What does that mean to you? What does that mean? And then how can this happen in museums' digital spaces? Who can do that work? How can we invite guest curators, community members, but also do things in a way that are careful and ethically sound, and also encourages intelligent thinking, and not, as we listened to this morning, doesn't mean we have to engage all voices or put all opinions at the same level together within the same forum. So I turn to you. You all are here for a reason. Something sparked your interest, imagination, and perhaps some ideas of how this could work in your institution, or how could you work across collections. I have, again, sort of thrown down some ideas, but does anyone in the room want to speak up, either talk about some of the big ideas that I've thrown in there, bring my attention to something that we've missed, and can we, I'm also using, because this is a museum tech conference, how can we use all of our skills and all of our collective knowledge to build together, or build some ideas together? Does anyone have any comments or reactions to any of the ideas, at least that I've discussed at the moment? Yeah,
So,
Brian?
One question about
Yeah.
the Wilson, from 25 years ago is, what's known about how the public responded to it? Because I think there's a lot that we know about how curators and how the art world and how transformative it was for them. But what was done at the time, or what's been done after for people, how they interpreted what it really meant? Was it the actual, because there's so much about letting the curator standing aside and letting an artist interpret the object, which is a very navel-gazing way of looking at it for the museum community. But how did the public interpret it? And what can we learn from that today?
Right. So in terms of, I am not aware of formal evaluation that was done What I've been able to find are more reactions in local newspapers and such, but I don't have access to, although someone may know if that's available or where we can find out some of that, those actual visitor reactions. Yeah, Paul, do you have an idea?
There's some quotes on their website. I got it right here.
We-
Right? You know, one pager wondered, how can the person responsible for this be stopped? Right? Another called it the worst and most racist display I have ever seen in a museum. Right? You know? So there are lots of descriptions online that have gathered the comments from
Okay.
visitors.
Okay. Yeah, and that's risky, right? Like that's, you know, how do you handle that? And that was obviously in a physical space. How could this be recreated in a digital space? I mean, I think it could easily be created in a digital space. Would you create this or invite someone in to do this at your own museum? Anybody? Yes? Hands? Has anybody here done this? Yeah? Would you like to talk a little bit?
Something similar. We worked with so we have a kind of anthropological gallery called Medicine Man. I'm trying to remember the name of the project now. So we invited a collective called Hot Brown Honeys and an artist called Busty Beats in to kind of for a weekend to kind of basically to take over this gallery, to pepper it with quotes, to do an audio installation, to kind of basically recontextualize everything in this space. It's called, we are the authors of our own ancestry, or something like that. It was really interesting. So, and outside the gallery, they installed a cake in the shape of our founder's head, and invited people to eat from it as liberally as he took from other cultures. And it was quite provocative and quite kind of in your face, and certainly made some people inside our organisation quite uncomfortable. I think some of us who are perhaps a little bit too comfortable with our own discomfort. But we also handed control of our Twitter for the weekend over to the collective. And for 24/7, because they're based all around the world, UK and Australia, they tweeted as us. We gave them kind of for the weekend, they were welcome collection, and they were tweeting, they were like, patriarchy, what's up with that?
Okay.
And it's got like this, however, got less negative reaction from our online audience than we thought it would. So it's a kind of intervention in our space and also a taking over of our voice.
I saw another hand in the back. No, hand down. Okay. Yeah, so I am thinking also about sort of intentionally putting things out there that, you know, so for example, this portrait of Henry Darnell III. And in the exhibition, the light is shown on the face of the enslaved boy, and the label is, am I your brother, am I your friend, am I your pet? To help, again, sort of shine light on paintings that have been looked at from a particular age, representing a particular family, and looking at the voices and the people who are not named in them. Or in, let's see, we've got other examples. Here's metalwork you have both a silver service and a slave shackle that are juxtaposed together, that both come from the same, that, you know, normally would not be put together in the same kind of case. So what I'm thinking of, like, okay, so this is potentially this is very risky, not potentially, it is, sure. And some of this could happen in a very controlled sort of face-to-face kind of way or public program. Is there a way to do this online, digitally? I mean, the answer may be that there is too much risk. There are too many voices we don't want to elevate who may participate in ways that the institution does not want to, well, this is the challenges, right? It depends on who you are. But to look through and find things that, again, perhaps may not be described to interpret a particular voice or story in the region or the area of which you're collecting, the mission of your museum, but that can be interpreted, whether it's who made it, how it was used, who was using it, not just who owned it, who bought it, who manufactured it. Obviously, I'm thinking of the Silver Service there. And so I'm hoping, I'm getting a few other folks, excellent, throwing in some examples. This morning, Seema Rao tweeted out a great graphic that I think she uses when she consults in inclusive interpretation tips for museums. And one of the worksheets there is asking the questions of, who is missing, what is missing, what are we missing? How can we fill in these gaps from at the object level, but that also at the interpretive exhibition level? So in some ways, I feel like this is certainly possible through different kinds of online exhibiting, online storytelling platforms. It's just a matter of what that content is. It's not really a matter of whether it's possible. That's sort of an easy kind of thing. And, including more detailed or nuanced, sort of different kind of descriptions within a collections catalog, which I know is really hard. It's very doable, but it's actually hard because there's a lot of data that's not there already. But that would be sort of one way for some of that additional research, whether it's to sort of travel along with an object. I threw in Twitter bots. I don't think they're doable, but there's so little control over them in a way that it sometimes only can pull and remix random objects of things. But that is certainly something that is a possibility to do, but you need obviously open collection, open images, and data to drive some of that. And the same with collection, connecting across different kinds of collections data sets or extracting from existing data. So something like the Mount Vernon's database of enslaved families, let me just, which are basically transcriptions, recordings found in the documents of George Washington. They are from he and his farm managers and instances of enslaved folks who were working, who lived, who were owned by the Custis, by the Washington family. So birth, death, somebody went to Maryland and traveled with with Washington. And so there are all these ways that even though the documents are George Washington's papers and they are known by that great man, that within all of those documents, there was a very concerted effort to look through and listen for and pull out sometimes named and unnamed enslaved individuals who had lives, and these are sort of traces of their lives that have been discovered. So there is this database. There isn't a great way to read the stories quite yet, but there is has been an attempt, a sort of step one, which I know was a multi-year step to kind of get through this, but also to make visible individuals who are often seen as invisible. Now, at the plantation, if you go to Mount Vernon itself, they have also made a dramatic sort of turnaround and interpretation of the enslaved cabins and quarters that they have been reclaiming, and archaeological sites that they're using to also make them more visible and present. Does anybody? Yes.
So this is a thought, a little bit coming from the realm of the contemporary art museum rather
Yeah.
than the historical.
Yes.
I've been witnessing a number of institutions that have become focal point for controversy in exhibiting works of contemporary art that have ignited, some kind of a public debate. So examples might include the Dana bringing to the table, right?
Yeah.
It feels like everything is sort of amplified at this particular moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts on that? Because I feel like that's can this happen? And I'm not sure that if it can, but Joshua.
I guess my feeling is that many of the curators in especially our history museums, I mean, we understand that revision isn't something bad. It's history. It's what we do, and in a way that perhaps our visitors don't. That we're perhaps more willing to bring a disruptive, critical lens to the documents, to the collections, to everything that we have in a way that we can't go full stop in front of our visitors because they're coming to a history museum, they're expecting to see a very specific sort of narrative. So I think that we're going to find a lot of curators who are going to do much more than Wilson did if they had audiences who would be able to accept that. And so we find ourselves bringing them along in a lot of cases.
Okay. Richard? Did you have your, and then you, yeah.
So I was at the Digital Library Federation conference and went to the Collections as Data workshop.
Okay,
And
yeah.
one of the things that they're working on is trying to develop personas
Mm.
for who would be the kind of people who would use collections as
Yeah.
data.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
everything that I saw in terms of that conversation were, Scholar A wants to do this kind of like data analysis. And one of the questions I raised is, who or where should we try to develop personas that either might problematize collections as data,
Yeah.
or I suggested, what's an anti-persona? So, right, where's an example of taking that data and maybe using it in ways that we don't expect it? It's not the intention of how we expect it to be used.
Right.
And I don't know how that fits with what you're trying to do
Sure.
here,
Yeah.
of whether that's a way to connect up some of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up, and I sort of linked to those sort of facets, but I didn't know that the personas were being done. I think that's that's always a good sort of user-focused way of approaching this, and I do kind of feel like there are enough stakeholders and community members for every institution that would be and could be very much part of that. Someone in the middle had their hands up, and I don't know your name, but hand is down. But did you have your hand up? Oh, okay. Yeah, no, please. Yeah.
I wonder if there's, maybe using the word that's falling out of favor, but is there a way to sort of increase literacy among visitors to sort of incrementally bring people along? If they're not quite ready for full force, here's where we're thinking, maybe if they're learning the history that they may not have learned, or they're out of school for something, whatever. Just sort of helping people come along to where historians here's the track.
Yes, not just one intervention, but a series of ways through, multiple channels and places. Yeah, I think that's also sounds like a good strategy. Yeah.
I wonder if there's also something about like what you're saying about user
Mm-hmm.
personas and this idea of literacy. If like there's a way to use like the physical space of the museum and the fact that visitors are always going to be creating their own path,
Yeah.
and use that as a way to create something that's almost like, we're already taking the interesting aspects of this object or this story, this particular moment in history, and then we create a storyline or narrative we can opt into.
Mm-hmm.
My reference is, for example, the Dallas Museum of Art, right,
Okay.
where they have these guides that you can pick up and say, if you're wanting this type of an experience, we recommend this tour, or this self-guided tour,
Mhm.
on this path. If you did that for different type of user profiles, then maybe you could manage to give them a conservative historical experience and this kind of radicalized vision at the same time, but within reason of the fact that like people are negotiating space and guiding themselves anyway within the museum.
Yeah. I think that's a yes. Perhaps not. Yes, I think there, and this sometimes is that tension between some of the, and I'm just speaking on my perspective here of what I see as a little more interpretive leeway sometimes that art museums have that history museums don't always get, in terms of being able to interpret an object as you wish. I mean, you're right, people do it, but the guidance there sometimes the stakes are higher. Not that but it's sometimes that can work, but I think it can be a little more challenging in that sort of a way. Yes, a comment in the back, and then I think we are slowly running out of time, so please, yes.
I hesitate to talk because I work with the virtual part of my museum, but I work for the Canadian Museum of History, and we recently did our Canadian galleries, and we just put it all in there.
Yeah.
And they
Well-
were expecting residential schools, we have acute crisis, and it's in our museums in Quebec. And you know what? I think they're almost disappointed with the way people accepted it.
Yeah.
You know, like they just, a museum's almost like a safe space. And you got, I don't know about you, but my museum, I hear all the time, people almost make their own stories when they're visiting somebody anyways, right?
Right.
So they just present the stuff the way it was, and like people just go in there and they're like, I'm in a museum and I trust this space and this is it, and you know, if I don't like it, I can walk quickly past that to the next showcase or the next section. And there really wasn't any big reaction.
Yeah.
And we've been doing a lot of work. I know our museums repatriated all of the indigenous artifacts that the communities wanted back. They've all been sent back. So I know we've been doing a lot of work with our indigenous people and having their voice inside the museum for their objects. So, but as far as the more difficult subjects came, there's no real, I think just put
Yeah. Do we have, we
Time
need to move on.
for a quick reply to that, yes.
Okay, yes.
I work at a historic site, and I'm working on a perspective mobile tour where people can look at the same concepts through an enslaved perspective versus a owner-family.
Yeah.
perspective. And one of my
Okay.
big concerns having separate options is giving people an avenue to bypass all the difficult narratives.
Yeah, right.
To reinforce their own personal views.
Yeah.
So if someone
Right.
is really uncomfortable with the topic of slavery and enslaved, they could just
Avoid
go
it.
this perspective and then kind of skip everything that might challenge them. And finding a way that we can make that more difficult is one thing I've been working on because you got to get both sides of the story. So that's a challenge I think sometimes when you have separate experiences. Is what happens if someone just says, I'm not comfortable, I'm going to stay away from that.
Right.
And it's actually something we need to know more about.
Right. Yes, yes, how to integrate, like how not to separate it out, so you can't, it's harder to avoid. Okay, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you all coming here and thinking about things, and feel free to continue to add. I'm not gonna shut down this document, I'll leave this here. I've tweeted it out, and I'll tweet it out again. So thanks very much.
And thank you very much, Sheila.